I'm really pleased to have Teresa Ko, the IFRS Foundation trustee, but also somebody who brings a huge wealth of experience to the discussion. So in her day job, Teresa is the senior partner in Freshfields Hong Kong office and also China chairman. She's worked with the capital markets community in Asia for a long time, and particularly helping both Chinese state-owned companies, privately owned companies, international companies list on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, including 9 out of the 10 largest IPOs in Hong Kong, the latest Alibaba, which is of course a name that everyone will recognize. She also is involved in a number of public service appointments, including one of 4 co-chairs of the Hong Kong Stock Exchange's Listing Review Committee, deputy chair of the Securities and Futures Commission, Takeover and Mergers Panel, and of course, the role that she is here with us today, IFRS Foundation trustee. So welcome to the discussion, Teresa.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to speak to all of you at this very prestigious A4S Summit. And I am really grateful for such a wide participation, particularly on a Friday morning in December. So I've been asked to say a little bit about the background of this consultation paper and the process that has taken us, and to take a few questions, which I'd be very pleased to do so. So maybe to start, I can tell you that it all started in the context of IFRS Foundation's 5-year review of our strategy. And this took place, it seems such a long time ago, but it was in January 2019. And it is actually quite a long time ago, thinking back about it. And obviously, the IFRS Foundation is a public interest body. And so, in fact, we also had a new chair, and we all welcomed an opportunity to basically do some blue sky thinking. And as you mentioned, I'm a corporate and securities lawyer by day, and even I couldn't help noticing the volume of non-GAAP numbers that are increasingly taking on more discussion time, during IPOs or, amongst investors. And many of the trustees are beginning to question the relevance of financial reporting, particularly in the light of the growing focus and the body of information that comes out of sustainability reporting. And we are all wondering what impact that this trend may have on the IFRS Foundation itself. So we felt that, this was too important a topic not to spend some time examining as part of our ongoing strategy. So before I knew it, I had become a member of a very small task force to undertake further research and analysis. So the task force spoke to many stakeholders involved in sustainability reporting. We're talking about from a broad range of academics, people who've been working in that area, regulators, public policymakers, investors, preparers and practitioners, as well as members of the ESG community. And one finding, which was loud and clear, was that there is an urgent need to improve the consistency and comparability in sustainability reporting. And this is particularly needed to combat climate change disclosure. We saw many organizations and bodies providing sustainability reporting frameworks, standards, and matrices, targeting different sets of audiences. And there were also regional as well as national initiatives to complement private sectors in initiatives. In fact, at our last count, I think we identified some almost 7,000 different matrices, which was just, kind of like too many by anyone's standard, and the landscape looked extremely chaotic. What we also saw was risk of fragmentation globally, and there was a crying demand for a global framework to give greater comparability and reduce the complexity of approaches and objectives. Now, so what can the IFRS Foundation contribute? In fact, as part of that research and analysis, we kept hearing people nudging us on to say, hey, you should come forward and try and do something about it. It is true that few will argue against IFRS Foundation's proven governance structure, our transparency, and our participatory standard setting due process. And as I mentioned earlier, we are also a public interest body. We are independent and we have a global focus. And we also have an adoption and application process and mechanism that has stood the test of time. And so far, this process has facilitated 144 jurisdictions to use IFRS standards globally. And many of us, and I'm one such person, feel that there should be a huge amount of connectivity between financial reporting and non-financial reporting. I mean, the two should operate closely with each other. And I think that the IFRS Foundation should be well placed to orchestrate that. So what options did we consider? The obvious one is to do nothing. Nobody favored that. I think all the trustees thought that, look, it's the time to act rather than just to sit back and just watch the world go by. We could facilitate existing initiatives. We could kind of add to what is already out there. But we felt that adding another voice to the discussion will not help to isolate what is really important and attempt to consolidate, harmonize, or even streamline, all the excellent work that has gone on before us. So we didn't like the approach of just, kind of participating and may even be seen to be competing with some of the other bodies which already have some standards or matrices that are available for preparers and investors. So we felt that to achieve global comparability, which is a space that has to be filled, and nobody is doing that, we need to think of something different. So we therefore came up with a proposal to create a new sustainability standards board. And this board will sit within the IFRS structure, and it will work alongside the IASB, which is our kind of standard setting engine. And I think we will also commit to build on the work of the existing sustainability initiatives. Now, we are mindful of the enormity of this job. In fact, as we edged towards publishing the consultation paper, we were all wondering, oh my God, this is a mammoth task that we are taking on. And so we focused very seriously on identifying what we believe to be the conditions for success, which we set out in paragraph 31 of our consultation paper. Now, the trustees considered that for us to be successful, and if this new sustainability board were to be able to take off, we need to have achieved a sufficient level of global support. And it's global support from a spectrum of stakeholders, from the public authorities, from governments, from global regulators, as well as market stakeholders, including, most importantly, preparers as well as investors. And we have to have that support in all our key markets. We believe that it's important that this board would be able to work with regional initiatives for us to be able to achieve global consistency and reduce complexity. And we need to ensure the adequacy of the existing governance structure, right? The existing governance structure supports one board, which is the IASB, And if the trustees are going to have oversight over 2, then we need to kind of think about what additions need to be made to that structure. And we need to have an appropriate level of technical expertise for the trustees, for the new sustainability board, and the staff. I mean, it's a totally new area from financial reporting. And I think we need much more human capital of the right kind of experience, expertise to help us succeed. And we need separate funding. I mean, that goes without saying. I think the money that's been contributed towards the IFRS Foundation so far are for financial reporting, and that will be segregated from the funds that will be needed for the new sustainability board. And we need to develop a structure and a culture that seeks to build an effective synergies with financial reporting. I think this is a very important point. I don't, nobody wants the two to operate in a vacuum. And I think the numbers are still extremely important, and one has to make sure that the two talk to each other, as it were. And finally, and last but not least, I think the current mission and resources of the IFRS Foundation cannot be compromised by the establishment of a new sustainability board. Now, our chairman, Erkki Lindenden, has described our proposal to be a demand-led approach. What that means is that we are all ears to hear from all the stakeholders from around the world, whether it is from developed countries or developing countries, and from investors, academia, business, regulatory policymakers, professional colleagues, or from the ESG community. I think the reason why we want to reach out to all of you is because the trustees would like to be able to make an informed decision. So you will have seen that the IFRS Foundation itself has also undertaken quite a number of outreach events with a view to encourage more discussion on this topic. At the end of the day, our view is that if there's no demand for us to set up this new sustainability board, there is nothing more for the IFRS Foundation to do. Now, so far, we have had positive responses from a number of organizations already. In fact, almost on the day that we published our consultation paper, we were extremely delighted to see the group of 5, and by which I mean SASB, GRI, CDSB, IIRC, CDB, and then 2 of them have since announced their merger together. Already wrote and said that I think they would be happy to collaborate, and then Eric Deeden, who is the chair of the IOSCO Sustainability Task Force, also wrote an open letter in response to the letter from the group of 5, acknowledging that this consultation is an important milestone, and asking everybody to sort of engage on it and consider this as an option going forward. Closer to home, the FCA responded to the consultation letter. In fact, we're delighted to receive that, and so early on in the process. And they signed a joint statement with the UK government voicing support for the direction of travel proposed in the consultation paper. And of course, and everybody has heard Mark Carney recently, again, to say that, a new sustainability board is the preeminent international pathway to making climate disclosure mandatory. And I think what clearly there is a lot of work that is ahead of us. And what we would love to hear from stakeholders are, I think, everything you might want to make available to us. But at the same time, I think there is still going to be some debate on scope, right? Our proposal is to start with climate-related disclosure because it's the most urgent. I mean, you've heard many references to the world on fire, And I think this is also the feedback we have received from the pre-consultation. Our proposal is to be investors focused, and we are aware that this approach is different from the EU approach in the non-financial reporting directive. Currently, we are keeping an open mind on that. I think we recognize that the risk of the actions of companies on the environment are related. So double materiality has to be considered seriously, but we recommend to start with single materiality first before broadening out to cover wider sustainability factors. But again, we are open-minded as to, what we would ultimately start to do. And so, please be specific and express your views, and hopefully some justification as to the position you take. And we have also heard suggestions of adopting a building block approach. So different global national institutions can take different blocks depending on their own political progress and regional initiatives. And also there is a question as to what level of assurance should be required to make the information reliable and decision useful and globally comparable. There is currently no financial assurance done by the Big Four, and they do not report on the reliability of a lot of the sustainability information. And only review information in financial statements, and whether that should be the right approach going forward, and who would have the expertise, the experience, and the qualification to provide assurance, and at what level we should expect. So again, I mean, all these areas, I don't think there is any easy answer, but we would like to hear from all our stakeholders. And in terms of timeline, I think the first milestone is the deadline for the response to the consultation paper. And so far, as of yesterday, the staff at the IFRS Foundation has sent me an email, this morning. In fact, we've received 34 sets of responses already. They are all available on our website. However, if a response to consultation paper pushed out by the IFRS Foundation were anything to go by, we are expecting several hundreds, I'm told, by the end of the year. I don't think anybody had thought seriously the timing of the deadline. I mean, we're talking about, cutting it off just one day before the new year. But I think on this year, not many people can actually travel to anywhere. So I know that, in fact, I've reached out to a few of our clients, and they are responding. So hopefully there will be an enthusiastic response from a wide variety of sources. This is good because we have undertaken some extensive outreach, and we hope that it will yield to some positive action. So we have received responses from the United Nations, IFAC, regulators, academics, individual citizens as well. Most have answered the questions we asked, and you will see that we listed out, I think it was 11 questions, but we've said that you don't have to answer all of them. You can, but you can just answer the ones that you want to answer. And a few have been, the author's open opinions. So, and the support so far is that there is a need for a global set of global sustainability standards, and for the IFRS Foundation to create the Sustainability Standards Board. And based on the responses we've received so far, the climate first approach is seen as logical, but as you would expect, some are wanting a broader approach, particularly around the environment. I think one thing you can be certain is that the staff at the IFRS Foundation, together with the task force, will analyze each and every response very carefully. And so we have quite a lot of night jobs, waiting for me. And we will go through the response in the first quarter of next year. I think our first trustee meeting next year is in February. And I think if we so long as we receive a clear mandate from the consultation responses, I believe that we can move quite quickly. I say this because the trustees recognize the urgency, and Mark Carney says that we should work at pace to meet the soaring demand for consistent, comparable, and high quality sustainability information amongst market practitioners. When he uses the word at pace, I think I get it. I get that we've got to get on with it. One thing is also very clear. We have the benefit of not needing to start from the beginning, given a lot of excellent work that has already been done by the likes of TCFD and the Group of Five, and now the Group of Four. The whole idea is to benefit from what they have done. So in closing, I will just leave you with these thoughts. I think we are all in this together, and this is a one-time opportunity where we can do good to the world on a global scale. There is a lot of noises out there, almost so much that you can't see the woods for the trees in terms of the volume of sustainability related disclosure that preparers and practitioners and investors have to wade through. There is also a lot of entrenched thinking. What I would like to hear from all of you is your own wish list in your draft response. So please be as specific as you can, and think of it as if you had a magic wand, what would be your top 3 wishes that you would like Santa Claus to bring to the world next Christmas or the Christmas after next? So on this note, I stop here and I'll be very happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Teresa. I think that was a very comprehensive overview, and I think you've woven in a bit of the answers to some of the questions that we're already seeing coming through. I'd like to pick up on a couple of them, if I may, and actually quite a few of the questions revolve around the same themes. So I'll join some of the questions together. I think one of the obvious ones that you did touch on is how you will leverage the existing world. You've got a lot of companies. I think KPMG have just released their latest survey. 80%, I think, is the statistic they talk about, of certainly the larger end of the market already doing sustainability reporting. And we've had questions specifically around the TCFD and around integrated reporting. So how would the IFRS Foundation Sustainability Standards Board leverage these issues and the existing work? Would you build on it? Would you how would you incorporate it? And then as a second part to that question, something that is also coming through very clearly is that question on timeline. And I think in the dialogue we've had with the CFO community, that's one of their main concerns. So those two concerns, how do you make sure you just adopt what is already out there? And how do you do that? To quote your comment from Mark Carney, at pace, at scale, what are the timelines?
No, I think because we are involved in a consultation exercise, right? So, I mean, I think it would not be right for me to, or I'm not in a position to tell you how it will come out, right? But I think I can share with you how maybe at a personal level I see this, because and then I think it's fair to say that members of the task force have discussed this, because And I think one thing is, I personally think that we need to have a roadmap. It will not be doing the world a favor just to say, okay, it's established and then over to you. You know, that wouldn't be what I think will be optimal. So, and then I think a roadmap will involve how you go about developing a global set of standards which are comparable and auditable and decision useful, okay? And we have already said that we want to build on the existing framework. And so if you look at the significant standard setters at the moment, which provide matrices for people or frameworks for people to follow, we have only a handful. In fact, we are talking about the group of 5. And we are talking in particular TCFD, which was born out of, you know, the Financial Stability Board, and they are very much a task force. And then I think if you look at the direction of travel, I think there is already sort of much more that been done to say that maybe their framework will be required to be adopted mandatory. Now, personally, I don't believe in just sort of like taking that and dropping it into the new sustainability board, but one has to start somewhere. And I think that will probably be a good starting point. And then obviously we have to work with a group of 4 and see you know what more they can. We are already having very constructive dialogue with the one which focuses on climate risk, and so I think the way I see it would be to build on, you know, some of the existing frameworks and disclosure matrix, but we need to opt in people who are experienced in this area, and which is why I say, look, come on, let's have some fresh thinking. Let's not just be entrenched into single or double. Okay, I mean, I'm also talking about what is the global reset and where should we start? And we've got to think ahead as to what this world needs, not now, but in 10 years' time. Is carbon revision the right measure? Or have we got something new that actually we can contribute to this kind of richness of information? And ultimately, what is it that investors should have, not just what they want? And I think that the roadmap should also increase, you know, if we can just be focused on climate first, and then we could hopefully evolve into something else, and it is building the expertise so that we can expand it. So I don't think anyone has a magic bullet, but I think it will require a lot of work, and that's why the consultation responses is so important. Because I don't believe that there is a prerogative on fresh thinking, and I think we want more ideas, and you know, we want people to come forward and say, look, okay, we've had this sort of information for the last God knows how many years, and it's just not going to get us there in order to ensure our survival. And so I want all of us, I think I would like to be outcome focused and say, what are we trying to achieve here? Okay, if we want to achieve global comparability to reduce wastefulness, then and then also connectivity with our financial reporting disclosure, how should that look? And I think we will be doing all of us a disservice if we're just going to adopt some existing framework without almost stress testing as to whether they will help us to survive, you know, in times to come.
Yeah, and I guess that links, that question of comparability is always one that contrast with, needs to interact with, in the sustainability arena, sector focus. So there's a question there around, and of course SASB has done a lot of work on sector. Their focus is sector by sector because the industries differ for sectors.
Yes.
ERI, that's a direction that they are going in as well. As well as having overarching standards. Is that something that's come up in the consultation of how you deal with different sectors? It's very different to the financial reporting approach.
Not specifically, but we are definitely aware of it. I mean, it is a mammoth task because if we are going to adopt a global set of standards, right? Different countries are in different stage of development. So, and companies are in different pace of development as well. So you've got to take them with us as well. So we really do need, you know, some experts in this area to give us their views, and so that we can take it into consideration.
And that point on experts, I think, has come up a few times. So I'd be interested whether you touched on the need for human capital. Could you foresee, has this come up at all in the dialogue, actually almost a merger between, say, some of the existing potentially more finance focused standard setters and this new body, because then you would immediately have there all of that human capital and be able to leverage some of the work that's already happened.
Definitely. I mean, obviously, you know, with these things, whether it merger, a combination, you know, it's not something that IFRS can just make it happen.
Of course,
so,
yeah.
but no, definitely. If one is looking to consolidate and build from the fantastic work that has gone on, I think that will be a logical outcome or logical step, and then also, you know, some of the funding could also be deployed, you know, on an aggregated basis. So we are not ruling out any options. And in terms of timeline, I do want to come back to your first question on timeline.
Yeah.
I think the IFRS Foundation will need to amend its constitutional document if it were to establish a new sustainability board. I think that is something that we had already considered, and it can be done, I think. But that should not delay, you know, the bigger goal, because we can always, I mean, even though it takes, you know, the usual consultation period and seek comments, but we can do it in parallel. And we are already kind of doing the thinking behind all that, so that you know, people should not be worried that, oh my God, there will be quite a lot of due process that has to be gone through.
And one of the other areas that potentially the IFRS Foundation has developed some expertise that's come up as a question is around XBRL taxonomy. Has that come up at all in the consultation discussion so far, whether there might be a role to really support that development around ESG?
Not specifically, but I think that, you know that the IFRS itself, the work of ISB, you know, has been very, very involved in taxonomy. So again, you know, the devil is in the detail, and clearly, you know, that will be kind of brought into the discussion if people raise that specifically.
Yeah. And then in terms of back to that question of human capital, is there a role for the IFRS Foundation in helping to really foster the professionalisation that might be needed? You have all of the accounting professional bodies. Do you think that this might also help develop professionalism, whether expanding the remit of those bodies, but also potentially around the kind of talent you need to really deliver the standards and the assurance and everything else in this area.
Yeah, it probably isn't something that we have taken on board specifically, because I think, frankly, if we can get the scope right, get the roadmap right, get the funding that we need, and how we collaborate with the existing bodies, I think we'd be really happy, right? But at a personal level, I have spoken to universities and in fact, the University of Science and Technology in Hong Kong, I think, which is a leading EMBA institution in the world, in fact, and have asked them to think about the kind of career path for people who work in environmental areas, because I have come across junior graduates who lament at the lack of career structures in that field. And so they work on many construction sites as an environmentalist, but there is no kind of defined or even undefined tracks. And, after, I don't know, a few years, they feel that they are kind of stuck. So I do hope that if we can focus on climate risk on a global scale as to what is the body of information that is most important, then the rest will follow, and then there will be more traction. And one of the things that will help us to provide more clarity is actually the type of employment professions and careers that can be further developed to support this work on a global basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So two more questions. One is around integrated reporting. So this is again back to how you would see the different elements of what gets reported fitting together. If I think of the work of the IFRS Foundation so far, that probably is most closely aligned with management commentary, which sits, if I understand correctly, more under the IASB and some of the work that has already been done in that area. And of course, the International Integrated Reporting Council has just merged, as you mentioned in your opening remarks, with SASB to form the Value Reporting Foundation. So how do you see almost that overarching bridge, the framework that knits together the financial reporting and the sustainability reporting, and how would that actually work in practice? Is that something that you've looked at all yet?
I have not looked at it in detail, but I can see from observing the development that there is hopefully more convergence instead of moving apart from each other. And I think that the traditionalists will say that financial report is all about historical, but there are also other debates to say that, look, I mean, there is there is also an element of anticipating the future, whereas and therefore I think that SASB announcing the merger with IRRC is extremely positive. And so those are exactly the type of development that I think I would like to continue to see, because I am all for consolidation, harmonization, and streamlining. I think we can deploy our energies towards so many other important things instead of just meeting so many different sets of criteria and requirements. And then I think we are seeing the rise of greenwashing, which is bad. I mean, the regulators are probably taking action and more urgently than ever before. And I think that we are also depleting our own resources if we have to waste our energy on so many different fronts. So, which is why I think it leads me back to, we really have to exercise a collective brain power to agree or attempt to agree what is the most important disclosure in order to tackle climate change from a preparer standpoint, which will help investors to understand the risk to the company and to the, okay, when we say to the environment and impact on the environment, I seem to be suggesting a double materiality approach, but I would like to take out the definitions or the labels and see whether we can actually arrive at something which will be optimal for us, and not to call it, this is single, this is double. But I agree that we have to, always keep our purpose in mind, because otherwise, it's just we'll probably be answering to too many demands, and we're not going to get there.
Yeah, and I think that brings for me two points. One is Nick Anderson, so one of your fellow trustees, a little while ago, underlined that actually under financial reporting, things like climate are increasingly relevant and should already be being reported to the extent that they're material. So you can see some synergies there. And then to pick up on your point on materiality, quite a few people have been talking about this sense of dynamic materiality, which I think is quite a good way of describing it. Things that might seem like they're about the impact on the world can quite quickly come back to bite an organization that isn't managing in a multi-stakeholder sort of more purpose-driven way, and we've really seen that during the pandemic. Now, I'd like to sneak in one final question before we're then out of time. It's been coming up quite a few different places. And I think particularly in the context of the pandemic, you've seen social issues really rising to the fore, and that need for companies to be supporting their communities, to be providing some of the solutions, and that can be, again, very financially material. So I think we've had a few questions of, is it enough to do climate first? Should it be actually looking at a broader set of issues? The standards are there, so could it not be possible to fast track?
Well, in an ideal world, I'd love it to all be fast tracked, so that we can get the global framework or the global level of disclosure done, right? But I can see that this that we have to probably tackle what is most urgent, and that's not to say that the S or the G, and especially the S, and in view of the epidemic, is not essential. But I think maybe we can't expect a new sustainability board to be the answer to everything. I think to the extent that there are some disclosure which are extremely important on the social front, maybe global regulators can require that. And ultimately, I think the publicly listed company have always had to consider what is material to their company. And as the world shifts from what is the purpose of corporation, from just purely making profits to, addressing all the concerns of different stakeholders, from the kind of business roundtable statement that was issued almost 2 years ago, I think there should be enough focus for each publicly listed company to decide what is important for them and how they should disclose that information, even on a voluntary basis.
Fantastic. Well, I think we are out of time, Teresa, so thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. I think probably just to close, encouragement to everyone watching and everyone who watches as part of the on-demand viewing to submit their consultation response. As you said, you welcome people who submit both across all of the 11 questions, but also picking out the ones of most relevance to them. And the closing date, I believe, is 31st of December.
Yes, yes, yes. Get it done before Christmas and you can enjoy the rest of your holiday.
Absolutely. And then you can also see everyone who's already submitted their responses
on the website. Indeed, absolutely. Yeah. Add to the discussion, and we will be all very grateful. And thank you for thinking about this. This is an important area.
And presumably all of the details, if people did want to respond, are available on the IFRS Foundation website.
Yes, indeed, absolutely. And then we also have, I think, published, additional materials and source materials. So if you want to kind of dig into some of the research that some of us have read, and so, it will be available.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, thanks a lot, Teresa. Thank you.
Not at all, Jessica. Thanks again. Okay,
Great.
thanks everyone for participating. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.